I am joined today by Mads Singer. Now, Mads is somebody that I met for the first, even though I've known him online a little bit for a long time. I met for the first time about a year ago at SEO Spring Training. And I didn't really know what to expect because to be honest, I didn't really know that much about you, but the thing you talked about was managing a team and a lot of stuff like that. And I found myself going, I agree with that. I agree with that. I agree with that the whole time you were talking and saying that this is stuff I do. This is stuff I do. And like, it was very vindicating for me. And I don't think I've ever told you this, but because I don't really know, like, I don't have any experience on running a team. I've just kind of figured it out as I went. But the fact that I agreed with a lot of it made me feel a lot better. And you were the last presentation of the day or of the event, if I remember right. And I found that was very helpful. So anyway, that's my experience with Mads. I'm going to ask him. First, I'm going to say hello. How's it going?
I'm very good. I'm super excited for this live stream. And yeah, always love sharing and helping people.
Yesterday was Mads' birthday too. So please tell Mads happy birthday. And if you could just let us know a little bit about yourself, like your background, your origin story, what you do and what you do now and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so origin story, sort of brief, was I'm from Denmark originally, left when I was 18, moved to Ireland, started in the big corporate world, working in big companies like Xerox, IBM, moved into management, and it has very much been my passion since. About 10, 11 years ago, I left the corporate world, started my own business, and one of the biggest things, both in the corporate world, but also in small businesses, I saw as a gap was managers and business owners learning and knowing how to manage people. So nowadays, there's so many people starting to, they start a business, they have a great idea, they start an e-commerce store, or they start a SEO agency, or they start a business, and they have no background, or they don't know very much about how to hire the right people, how to manage them, how to get the most out of them, how to put the right people in the right places. And that's really what I specialize in, teaching people. So over the last sort of 10 plus years, I've also built a number of other businesses. So we have a large outsourcing company. We have a SaaS app also around management called heyramp.com. We have a job site in South Africa. We have in-house SEO team where we basically do SEO for our own sites. We used to do a bunch of sort of content sites, grow them up and flip them and so on. But obviously, in the recent past, Google have started being less excited about that. So have we as well. And then I run a large SEO conference in Vietnam, in Saigon, called the SEO Mastery Summit, which just happened a couple of weeks ago. And yeah, that's awesome.
Awesome. So like I said, the thing that I took away from your presentation was how one of the things that stuck out to me was like, if somebody calls in and they're like, I forget the name you gave, but like Bobby is sick and you don't know who Bobby is, that's a problem. And that's something that I've said, not in that exact way, but pretty much that same way before. And I guess that's the thing I want to talk about first, because it's a big part of my philosophy on running a team too, is knowing the individuals. Like, is that important? And like, when do you get to the point where it's too many people for you to do that with everyone?
So the key thing is, when you run a business, you don't necessarily need to know every individual, but you must know all the people who report directly to you, right? So the thing is, organizations are built, funny enough, as organizations. And the important thing is, for someone managing a team, they must know their team well, right? So a lot of the time people have this idea that, oh, well, I pay them, so they have to show up and they have to do great work because I pay them. But reality is, we're all humans, and humans are all about relationships. Like, if you call up a friend and say, hey, I'm moving next weekend, can you help me? If they say yes or no, typically depend on how good a friend they are, right? And business is honestly no different. Like, I'm not saying you have to be a friend of your staff members or the people who report to you, but you have to build a relationship. Yep. You have to get to know them, and you have to show them that you care about them. Because here's the thing, if you want them to come in and work a weekend because something is blowing up and their only feeling is you don't give a shit about them, like, why on earth should they do that? Now, if they know you care, if you've taken care of them when they've had a difficult situation, they're a million times more likely to show up for you when it's really needed, right? And That one of the biggest things for me is when I talk with many business owners, they're like, yeah, but I'm too busy. I can't talk with my staff all the time. And my message to them is very clear. If you're too busy to talk to your staff on a regular basis, you're prioritizing wrong, and you're the reason why your business isn't growing, right? It's so easy to say, oh, I'm busy, and you likely are, but that's because you're doing the work. You're not
Exactly.
actually getting your team to grow. You're not actually, like in your case, right? You have great customer service. Like, one of the things I love about Legit is the customer service aspect. Like, every single time there's a problem, like, don't get me wrong, they don't necessarily always say what you want them to say, but they answer quickly, they're helpful, they're very supportive, and that's because there's obviously a good team culture. One of the other companies I absolutely love working with in a similar position is WPX. Again, I'm sure there's better web hosts out there, but in the WordPress space, it is by far the best customer service. No matter how stupid you are at websites, if you have a problem, they help you out. If you need to migrate a site, they'll do it for you, right? And the whole thing is customer service is just a competitive advantage. And I'm sure you see that as well, Chris, like with
Oh,
Growing
absolutely.
Legit, like all these other platforms, like if you're trying to get customer service from Upwork or somewhere, right? Um, the service part goes out of it very quickly.
Yeah. And you talked about treating people well and letting them know that you care and how that's beneficial. It also happens to just be the right thing to do too. So there's a nice advantage to that. But
Right.
yeah, you said that they're a person, and it's stunning to me how rare people actually see the people they hire that way. Like, I hear people say, just get a VA from the Philippines to do it. Like, they're a piece of software that you can just feed some data and they'll like spit it out. I was like, that's a human being. Like, ask them to do it. So I
Like
I don't know what my point here is, other than that really irritates me.
it's a great point, because again, we run an outsourcing company, and we have quote VAs that are now CEO of companies and
Yep.
run multi-million-dollar e-commerce businesses because they're treated like employees,
Yep.
right? Like, whenever you hire people, when you have resources in your business, if someone is working for you 40 hours a week or 30 hours a week or whatever, right? Like, they are a part of your business. If you're not putting time into them, if you're not growing them, if you're not helping them add more value to your company, like, you're just blowing off your resources, right? And the biggest thing is that a lot of people succeed with VAs and a lot of people fail with them. And
Mm-hmm.
the biggest differentiator is how they treat them. The problem is, if you treat someone like a $3 an hour, a $5 an hour VA, then they're only ever going to be a $3, $5 an hour VA,
Yeah.
right? Now, I know extremely successful people that literally run companies entirely in the Philippines. Like, their CEO, the entire management team, all their staff is all Filipinos, and they're doing millions a year, right? So, in the end of the day, I'm not saying necessarily that outsourcing is the route to all good. I don't necessarily think it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's certain situations where it's super beneficial, and sometimes there's other better options. So I'm definitely not advocating using outsourcing for everything. What I am saying is, if you do outsource, if you do hire people anywhere else in the world, like, honestly, if you outsource somewhere else in the US or else in Europe, right? The thing is, even if someone is not in an office or in a chair next to you, if you don't treat them as an employee, and so often, particularly Americans, always have this like, oh, but this person is a contractor. And I'm like, I don't care what their
Right.
actual status is.
Yeah.
If they put time and effort into your business on a regular basis, and them becoming a better person, them doing better work is hugely beneficial to you, you better treat them like an employee, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the end of it.
Yeah, I don't even like the term VA, to be honest. I avoid that at all costs, because it's because, not that there's anything wrong with it in theory, but it's become I hate to even use this word, but it's like almost like a code word for slave in a lot of ways, the way people use it. And it's just it's used very disrespectfully, in my opinion. So I avoid it at all costs. But basically, the people that work with me, like, I have one person that lives somewhat close, but I don't see anybody in person. So, like, and then we're doing very, very well. So it's a thing. It's hard to manage. To be honest, it would be nice if I had some people in an office where we could like bounce ideas off, because you can't replicate that in my opinion. But we do pretty well that way. So
one of the things we often do with that is like once in a while you can still do like retreats, or you could still do some kind of management meetups or whatever, right? Where you actually get together the most important people in the company and also help them build a stronger relationship, right? So quite a few of my clients have definitely done those sort of things. But yeah, you're right. I mean, reality is now and probably also in the future, right? Like I've run a remote company for the last 10 years, right? Like all my business have been primarily remote. And I mean, as you go forward, the more tech, the more whatever happens, like remote is definitely a thing, and it's going to stay a thing. It's not just, COVID is here. What happened in COVID is companies realized, oh, we don't need to spend that much money in sunk cost in an office somewhere that honestly doesn't necessarily add that much value, right? And particular companies, like if you look at LA or New York, like I would be very sad to own a lot of sort of corporate property, right? Because the desire and the need for it is definitely going down, right? And now the thing is, a lot of people come to me and they say, well, how do you manage people remotely versus in an office? And what I always say is, if you have a bad manager, remote blows things up, because there's things that you normally do. Like when you walk into an office in the morning, like no matter how much you hate humans, you say hello, right? You say hi, you wave good morning, you do something. So there's certain things that happens when you're physically present that doesn't necessarily happen in a remote setting. So if you have bad managers in your team, that just becomes significantly worse if you go remote. Now, if you have good managers generally get very similar performance, or sometimes even more performance out of people when you go remote. Because again, if they're good at motivating people, if they understand the people they manage, often people get very motivated by being able to work from home and having that freedom and flexibility, right?
Yeah, I think COVID kind of more so than changed that. I think it revealed that.
Kickstarted it.
Yeah, because like we were already doing that anyway. So it was like not that big of a change for us as far as that goes anyway. I mean, obviously there were a lot of changes, but yeah, so that was interesting. Now, you said if you have a bad manager, and I assume that applies to any level, and I'm sure this is what a lot of people are wondering, is how do you identify someone who is quote unquote good or bad or a fit or not a fit? Like, what do you look for in any position? What do you look for in someone?
So just when it comes to management, right? One of the key things is that managers are generally not born, right? Like no one wakes up in the morning and is just a great manager. It's a skill set, right? So you have this good old saying that the best sales guy often doesn't make the best sales manager, but that's not necessarily something I agree with entirely. What happens is being a good sales guy doesn't automatically make you a good manager. But the thing is, if you can learn to be a great sales guy, you can learn to become a great manager, right? The same, if you can learn how to become a top level engineer, you can also learn how to be a great manager, right? But management is a skill. And the biggest challenge most companies have, one of the core reasons why they struggle to grow, is because they don't invest in actually training their managers in how to be a manager. Like every time a company hires a salesperson, they train them. Every time they hire a customer service person, they train them. They take an employee and put them into a management position, and they just expect them to know what to do,
Yeah.
which is basically insanity, right? Like your most important people need training more than anyone else. If you don't train the people that are most important in your business in the role they're supposed to do, like, you're not going to get very far very quickly.
Yeah. So when you talk about training, like that has its own set of challenges with when you're working with someone remote. What do you have any advice or insight on that? Like, how do you go about training
I,
someone? I know it depends on the
I,
type of company and the role, but
I'm obviously extremely biased because this is what my passion is doing. So, but again, I mean, we definitely have management training for those kind of scenarios. But honestly, even in general, like in most places, you can find courses, you can find books, you can find ways to help people, right? Like, I'm sure even in the city most people live, there's probably once in a while some trainings happen, right? Like a lot of the time, you want to make sure you invest in your people, particularly your best people, right? Like if they feel they struggle with communication, well, maybe they need communication skills. Maybe they need some help with that, right? Like a lot of the time, it's really looking at your staff and saying, hey, I'm investing in them. Like literally have a budget for your staff to go through development when it's needed, right? Because again, I help train a lot of managers, I help train a lot of business owners. And the thing is, in most cases, it is as much mindset as it is skills, because most companies, most business owners, when they start out, they still have the mindset of a freelancer. They still have a mindset of an individual contributor.
Yep.
And it's the number one thing that holds them back, right? Like sometimes I go in and work with companies that have been stagnant for years. They have good people. They're people with the right mentality, the right mindset. They're good people, but all they need is just a little bit of understanding of how to actually manage. And same for business owners. Like so many people come to me and they say, oh, I just want to do SEO. I don't want to manage people. I just want to be an SEO. I'm like, you need to choose. You either become a business owner and want to run a business and make good money, or you become an SEO and you focus on that, right? But trust me, like the successful people out there is not people who do SEO in the majority of the time.
Yeah.
Like again, I don't know you, but I know from the success you have that you do not spend the majority of your time doing SEO. Like I know it, and I've worked with like most of the big guys in the industry, right? Like, and they say the same thing. Like first time I started working with Matt Diggity, for example, like his first thing was, I don't want to manage people. If you ask him today, he probably doesn't want to do SEO. Like it's not that he doesn't want
No,
to
I
do
know.
it, but the thing is,
It's not as high ROI for him.
the second you start understanding the leverage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, when I wake up in the morning, if I have a great idea, I send a text message to someone and stuff happens without me having to do it.
Yep.
Right? Like I own multiple companies. When I want to start a company, I can plug a couple of people out from a different companies, and literally in a couple of days, I can kick a new company off to a flying start.
Yep.
And the ability to make things happen because I have a bunch of amazing people is freaking incredible, right? Now, most years, like I take 3 or 4 months where I go around just speaking and traveling, and I don't work much, right? Now, reality is most business owners are so ingrained in their business that if they leave for a month, their business go upside down, right? But I literally, again, like I build my businesses up well. I have good management teams, I have great managers, and my focus is to make sure I can do that, right? Like as an entrepreneur, we build businesses both for monetary gain and for freedom, right? Now, reality is most people love what they're doing. Most people love doing SEO, for example. But if it means that you're having a kid and you can't spend time with that kid, then yeah, you might make a lot of money, you might enjoy what you're doing, but part of it is the freedom. I look at it the other way around. I have the freedom. I can go and do SEO if I like to,
Yeah.
but I don't have to. The thing is, nothing crash and burns if I don't do SEO, right?
Right.
And that's the core aspect of it for me, right? It's really building the business that gives you the freedom. And that is for me, that's the difference between having a company that's making you a good salary. Because reality is, if you cannot leave your business for a month without it going down significantly, you don't really have a business. You have a very well paid job potentially,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't have a business. You don't have an asset you can easily go and sell, and this asset can keep running even without your input, right?
You said a couple things there that I've said myself before. I'm doing the same thing I did the first time I talked with you. First of all, you said they still think like a freelancer. I've made that point a lot, is that a lot of people that call themselves agency owners are really just glorified freelancers because they're still getting all the clients and they're still doing all the work. Because to me, that's a freelancer, and there's nothing wrong with being a freelancer. But I think that understanding who you are and what you do will make that process easier. And once you realize that you're a business owner and an entrepreneur, that then you start wanting to do less of the thing and wanting to grow the business and letting the other people do the thing. And I try to preach that to our freelancers, and some of them it gets through and some of it doesn't. But that's
but the mindset difference, the mindset difference though, Chris, is big, because most people, when you're just as an example, one of the key things is when you're a freelancer, it's all about what you do.
Right.
The second you own a business, what you do doesn't matter. It is about what the business delivers.
Yep.
And the thing is, so many people, as I said earlier, so many people's like, oh, I'm too busy doing this to do whatever, right? As a business owner, your focus is getting your team to deliver what needs to be delivered. If you're an agency owner, for example, and you come to me and you say, hey, I can't hire anyone who can do what I can do. Honestly, you haven't built a solid business, because solid businesses are built on processes that are executable. It's not just like, if you take some of the most successful companies in the world, take a company like Coca-Cola. Initially, they built one product. They had one product. They have a very simple process of how to build this, how to distribute it, how to market it. They had one product, right? It was a very simple thing. When you look at most SEO agencies, it's like one day they're dealing with an e-commerce store, the next day a local SEO client, the next whatever, right? The problem is they cannot take what they do, break it down into a process flow, and make it easy for other people to execute,
Yeah.
right? One of the big things is organizations exist for the specialization of labor. This is so incredibly important, because when you see people like, oh, I would love to hire a clone of myself, I'm like, no, then you just double your problem.
Mm-hmm.
What you want to do is, instead of hiring someone who is like you want to break your business down. You want to break down what you do into processes and silos. Because if you want to train someone, let's say you train one person or multiple people to do just link building, you can train someone way faster to be way faster productive and to be more productive if all they do is link building. Now, if you use a person who understands all about SEO to do link building, one, you're generally wasting their potential. But two, you also end up having to pay way more than you need to execute a job that is way easier to do, right? So when you actually figure out what is your process, right? So every single business I own, there's a process behind it. Like in our outsourcing company, we have a process. We are exceptionally good at hiring people. We're exceptionally good at hiring great people, right? And that's our focus. That's our process. Our core business evolves around our recruitment team, because that is our core thing, right? That is what we are absolutely great at. And all of our business is literally built around that, right? So it's like, how do we build a team that help find the right candidate? How do we get them interviewed? How do we fit them to the right roles, right? That's the focus. And if you in your business have that, if you have a clear process, you set yourself up for success.
Yeah. Um, I forgot what I was going to say. Well, anyway, yeah, one thing you said before was if you have an idea, you can just send a text message to someone. I've used the analogy in the past that I'm like Aladdin, and all I have to do is make a wish, and somebody else like makes it come true. And I hope that's not like disrespectful to anyone when I say it that way. That's absolutely the way it works for me. And sometimes I'm amazed, because like a couple of the features that we've built into Legit were just like a half-assed thought that I threw into Slack one night, and then like a couple weeks later, it's the thing that exists in the world, and it just blows my mind that people are that good and they're that committed that I have such a like a half-brained idea that they can just turn it into reality. I often say also that I'm like I don't know if this analogy works cross countries, but I'm like the Colonel Sanders of the company, because I'm really just the face on the sign at this point, and like everybody else is really what makes it work. So getting to that point was hard, though. I had to get over that. And that was the thing I was going to say before, was that egoism of nobody can do it as well as I can. To me, that's part of that is just not understanding how to train people, but it's also just arrogance in a way too, that I'm so special and I'm so good at this that nobody can do it the way I can. No matter what you're talking about, there's somebody that can do it just as good as you can. And even if they can only do it 80% as well as you can, then that's fine too, because that frees up you 100%. So I don't know if
I think a big thing about it is, again, if you cannot teach someone else to do what you're doing, again, it's not a business, it's not a process. Like, if you want to be a consultant, great, right? Like, yeah, you can make some good money for that, but it's very difficult to build a solid business that can run on its own. And you can take a month off. Let's say you have a kid, like, I've clients that have taken 3 months off the second they got a kid, and the ability to do that, Like if you build a company that gives you the freedom to do that, like that's freaking amazing, right?
Yeah, for sure. And it's something for me that I didn't expect. Like when I stopped having a job, my goal was to just make as much money as I made at my job and work for myself. And now it's turned into like, a big team and stuff. So I don't really know what my point is other than like, it's something I had to learn along the way. So but I'm glad that I did because it's made us grow tremendously and it's made it more rewarding for me. And hopefully for everyone else, they seem to be happy. So, um, you have a product called Ramp. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so one of the things that's very important when you're hiring people is really learning to understand humans and their natural behaviors. So if you look at yourself or you look at other people, right, one of the key things is that people are not naturally good at everything, right?
Mhm.
Like the person who is great at sales is not necessarily great at accounting. And people have natural strengths and weaknesses, right? That's how we're born, and that's how we are as humans. So one of the key things that we focus a lot on when we recruit and when we hire people and so on is very much finding people with the right type of personality for the right job. Because I see a lot of the time companies hire great people, but they put them in the wrong roles. And to really do this effectively, we use a behavior framework called DISC. And DISC is really it's a methodology, or it's a behavior test. And I mean, you can learn a lot from DISC overall, but we built a very solid free tool that people can sign up for. And if you do sign up at the moment, you can sign up on heyramp.com. You will get lifetime access to this tool and all the DISC features, right? So basically, you can test your entire team, you can test yourself and all future employees through the current DISC test that there is available from the tool, right? And this can help you give a much better understanding of who is your different team members, what is their strength, what is their weaknesses, and sometimes you might say, hey, this person is not very detail oriented, but they're sitting and doing stuff that really needs someone very detail oriented. Maybe they would be better in a different place. And this can really help you. It can also help a ton with recruitment. So we definitely use it a lot for recruitment, and many other companies do as well. So again, when you are hiring people, if you're looking for a certain kind of personality, it can be super, super helpful as well. So you can go and sign up now, and you will get lifetime access for all of these DISC features. Now, there's other features in there. So, for example, if you do one-to-ones with your team, which I highly recommend, you can do that as well. It's free up to 10 staff members, so that's also an option. And there's a lot more functionality coming to the tool on top of this.
Excellent. I'm glad you brought that up, like figuring out people's abilities and stuff, because, well, I'm glad that you have a systemized way of doing it because I'm fortunate in a way that I can usually work with someone and then spot what they're good at and like what their skill is. And like, even if they don't realize it and then like, and, encourage that and you put them in that kind of role. But that's, that's not something I can, teach. That's just a natural thing that I know how to do. And this sounds like this is what this helps people do if they aren't necessarily the best at that.
Yeah, so all of my clients, like I take them through much more thorough training, right, on understanding people through the DISC framework. And that's one of the very, very powerful things for business owners to learn and understand. But the DISC test is definitely a great starting point, even for people to get to understand themselves better, right?
Yep.
So if you're sitting out there as a business owner, you're trying to do a million things. And one of the things I always say is like, particularly your early hires, it's really beneficial for most people to hire people that complement them. A lot of the time, people are trying to hire someone who can do what they do, but really often, a lot of the time, someone who is opposite of you, someone who is different than you,
Mm.
is often a bigger benefit because your weaknesses, like I'll use myself as example, right? Like I absolutely suck at sales and marketing. And when I start a new business, the first people I hire is typically sales and marketing because that's what I suck at, right? Whereas if I had people like me, we would have a lot of great operators, we would have a lot of people that are great at delivering stuff, but we wouldn't have anyone to deliver to, right? So again, like getting to know yourself is definitely a core aspect for me. So
Yeah, I think that's important too. I have a partner in Legit, and it's almost like a running gag between us. But have much different decision-making processes. Like, I like to have numbers and data and information I can say to justify making a decision. And that works in a lot of situations, but he's much better with his like instinct and just kind of like, I don't know a good way to put it, but using your gut, your instinct to make decisions. And like, we irritate each other with it sometimes, but I think it's an important balance to have that kind of thing.
It's because you look at the world very differently. So by nature, Chris, you're very, very left brain. So you're a very, very logical person, and the way your brain function is very logical. Whereas your partner probably look at it a lot more emotionally, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like a lot of time people look at other people and they're like, why would anyone do that?
Right.
But reality is humans, and this again, if you get to know this better, like that's also one of the key things. Humans look at the world in a different way. So for example, if you have one person, like let's say we were going out for dinner, like I know instantly how you would think about going out. You would think about it in a logical way, like what's a place that's close, what's a place that's affordable, what's a place that's, have food we both like or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
An emotional person would typically look at it in a very different way. They would say like, where's the ambience nice? Where does the food presentation look good? And they don't really care how far it's away, but they have a very different way of making choices and making decisions. And again, there's not a right or wrong way. There's certain ways, or that there's certain things there's certain decisions that make sense to do in certain ways, and there's other decisions that make sense to do in different ways, right? But really learning and understanding people at that aspect, and if you actually can learn to understand why other people think the way they think, it'll also help you become a much better manager for them, because instead of just thinking, oh god, this person is stupid, you actually realize why they make the choices they make and why they do things the way they do, and that is very, very highly beneficial. So
yeah, because it goes back to saying what you said about you have a great person but in the wrong role. You can't figure that out until you know how they think and how they work, right?
exactly. And the thing is, again, if you learn to understand people, you can recognize it in an instant.
Yeah.
Like if you do, if I'm in an interview for a minute or two with a person, like I know exactly what they're good at and what they struggle with, right? And you can learn to recognize behaviors quite quickly.
Yeah, and it's a little off topic, but that's a skill that's valuable in other parts of your life too. Like if you,
Everywhere.
yeah, whenever you need to, it sounds kind of bad, but whenever you need to get something out of someone, if you can understand who they are and how they think, that helps a lot. Like I used to work in politics, and I was very good at like recruiting new volunteers because we had people probably aren't going to like to hear this, but we had a lot of information on people before we would even call them, and I could just look at the stuff in there and know what would work for that type of person, and like I would get them to become and volunteer. So, and other people would just like, they couldn't figure it out. They would like say, but you take so much more time, like reading the profile and all that stuff. It's like, yeah, but it works because then I understand them and know how to approach them. And I also know who to not even bother to talk to.
Yeah. And this is key, right? So like fundamentally for us, like recruitment wise, it's such a key point because one of the guys here, I saw there was a question saying how to choose the right team member. So one of the key things is a lot of the time people get really impressed with resumes and talk instead of getting like the key things that I always focus on is attitude, mindset, and like just the way people think about things, right? Like if someone like obviously if you need a developer, they need to be able to develop, right? Like if they've never coded before, you don't want to pay them for 2 years while they learn how to become a developer. But honestly, most business skills, like if you work in the online world, most skills are quite easily learnable, right? Even SEO. Like if you run a company and you run a company right, you break down your processes, you can teach someone how to do their job in a couple of weeks, or I'd say maximum a month. And the thing is, if you find people with the right mindset, the right mentality, and the right attitude, you're so much better off, right? Like most of the best people I've ever hired, they've been, some of them have been 18, 19-year old. They have not had any particular education, but they've had the drive, they've had the willpower, they've had the attitude of really kicking ass, right? Actually, I just saw the chat here. One of the guys that used to work for me a while back was watching. So That's interesting. But yeah, so that's fantastic, right? Like you want to look for that, because reality is it's not necessarily about hiring. Like particularly in the early days of a business, you don't have the financial resources in most cases to go out and hire someone with 10 years experience in SEO, or go and hire a CEO
Google
to run your
engineer.
company that have run 7 other businesses, right? Like you don't have the resources. So in most times in the big early days, like sometimes it's hiring great people and letting them grow with your business, right? And that's also why teaching and learning management is so important, because if you teach your team how to be a great manager, if you have managers in the company that learn how to manage well, what happens is that the people that work for them suddenly see, oh, this is how I'm supposed to do if I become manager someday. And they see good like role models, and it makes it so much easier to develop and grow your team from the bottom up, right?
Yeah.
Because you're growing the company in that sense. And that's one of the core things for me. Like we for managerial roles, I very rarely input people from the outside, because what happens is when you promote someone from within, one, you show your team that there's roles and there's possibility of growth, which is important, and two, you know what you're getting. So the thing is, sometimes you can hire an external person and you can be really lucky, but you can also absolutely get shafted, right? Like I know multiple companies that have literally gone bankrupt because they put in a operations manager or a new CEO, and they had a lot of great ideas, a lot of great vision, but somehow they just didn't gel with the company. They had some ideas that didn't work out, and literally the company crashed and burned, because again they didn't know the company culture, they didn't know exactly how the company was doing, etc. And sometimes they were trying to do a lot of change that just didn't fit in.
Yeah.
And you really limit risk when you're promoting from within, because you know what you're getting. Now that doesn't mean it's always successful. Like you can promote someone into a role that they never become able to do, or
Right.
able to do well, at least, right? That can happen, but your risk is significantly less. And even if people that don't work out, they tend to not fail in the same way as external hires can.
Yeah. You um, you mentioned that somebody, if you're hiring a developer, they have to know how to develop. I think the way to look at it is they need to have. I would rather hire somebody with like mediocre skill and like somebody who's an asshole but is a world class developer. Now, if you get up to like Google size or Amazon size, that's going to be you're going to have talent at that level if they're an asshole or not. But that's not who most of us are going to be. Most of us are going to need someone who fits in the company much better and can do the job a little bit and will get better at it because they're dedicated. Right? Is that kind of what you were saying?
If you look at the best teams in the world, there's no assholes amongst them.
Right.
Like if you look at the top elite, if you look, like, let's take military, like if you look at the top elite units in the military, it's not assholes that are just thinking about themselves, because they get weeded out really, really quickly.
Yeah.
Like those elite units need to work together. They need to achieve things. If you look at top businesses, like, yeah, there's people who are very assertive, very direct, and sometimes aggressive, but they rarely succeed if they don't learn how to communicate well with people, if they don't learn how to respect and care for other people, right? They rarely do.
Yeah. If they
And
stop at 5 o'clock because it's time to go home when there's a thing that they could spend 10 more minutes doing to get done.
exactly. But
Yeah.
this also comes back to the relationship, right? A lot of the time, well, there's two aspects. So one of the key things that most people kind of fail with is very much around giving people ownership and responsibility instead of giving them tasks. You have all these online gurus saying like, hey, if you want to grow a business, you figure out how to do something, and you sit down and write a process on how to do it, and you hire someone and you just hand them the process and say, do this thing. And that is a great way to run your business into the ground, right? So I'm sorry for all that advice that happens to a lot of people, but reality is that, number one, as a business owner, you don't want to figure out everything, right? I can promise you, the CEO of IBM is not sitting figuring out what 200,000 people are doing. I
Right.
promise you, right? And the thing is, if you want to grow a business, if you want to grow a business fast, you definitely don't want to be doing that, right? Now, in the early days, when you have 0 employees, you might have to do some of that. And I'm not saying don't share what you know, but the thing is, every single successful SEO, if you look at them, they never learned SEO by being handed a pile of processes
Right.
and being told, do this, do this, do this. All of them learned SEO because someone somewhere said, hey, man, we need to figure out how to get traffic. Can you try and figure it out? Or say, hey, we have this website, but we're not getting any clients. Can you do something? Right? Like everyone learns SEO as an example, or learn any other skill by being given ownership and responsibility. Right? If I was hiring you, let's take customer service as example, right? If I was hiring you to do customer service, if I just said, okay, Chris, I'm hiring you. Here's the process of how we do it. Just sit down every day, press this button. Here's how you answer an email. Just do that, right?
Right.
Like that is one, not motivating. Two, you're gonna people don't know what the hell they're doing or why they're doing it and so on, right? If you turn around and if you say, hey, Chris, I want you to come in here and help me. I'm a business owner. I don't have the time to answer all our customers every day, but I see how you communicate to people, and I really want you to own our customer service. I want you to be the man people talk with and help all our customers solve their problem, right? Here's the processes of what we're doing right now, but you're a smart fella, and I'm sure you can improve those over time. But the key goals for us is one, we want to answer all our customers within X amount of time. And we want to make sure that they have a good experience with us. So if we send them a customer service survey or something, we get a score that's really, really great. Right. Those two different ways, like the first way is what most people in the SEO industry does.
Yeah.
They literally just put stuff into a process. They hire some random VA. They're like, do this thing, and they wonder why people never come up with ideas of how to do things better. They wonder why, and it's just, again, it's learning better management, right? It's learning how to delegate, how to, I mean, hiring great people, yes, but the problem is when you're giving people tasks, you're in fact hindering their growth. So what happens is, if you start a company, you learn a whole bunch of stuff and you grow your skill set. Now, if you hire someone new, they don't start at zero, because as a company, you have a skill set. So they start down here, even if they know very little. Now, over time, if you give them ownership, they will grow and they will become smarter than you, right? What happens in most companies is the CEO is answering all the questions, they're dealing with all the problems. And while the staff grow a little bit, the CEO or the business owner grow even more. So they keep being the person who knows it all, who answers every question, and Slack is on fire every day because every problem they need to deal with. And it's purely down to bad management and a lack of delegation skills.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, it's, there's also I think it comes back to some of the arrogance too, is like people that can't, they have to document. And how am I trying to say? The most common thing I give to a question is, I don't know, what do you think we should do? Because I'm not arrogant enough to, one, know that I think that I know how to do everything, but also I want them to make decisions, because what's the point of hiring good people if you're just going to tell them every little thing to do? You can just hire the cheapest person possible if you're going to do that and let them do it. I would rather have good people that can make the decisions themselves. And when they do come to me, a lot of the time they already know the answer and they just want me to say yes, or just tell them, reaffirm what they already think.
Well, you have to make people think. Right? Like the whole thing is, when you answer questions, you build a process in people's heads saying, when I have this problem, go ask Chris.
Yeah.
And then people's like, why does my staff ask the same question all the time? Well, because you literally build a process in their head saying, when you have this problem, go and ask Chris. Whereas if you do it the other way around, and I don't even say I don't know, I just ask them like, hey, what do you think? And if they're like, oh, I'm a bit unsure, I'm like, what are the options that you see? Like, tell me the options. And they'll tell you like 2, 3, 4 possibilities. And you're like, great, that sounds like good options, or that sounds like options. Which one do you think is the best one?
Yep.
And honestly, it's not even about picking the one that you think is the best one. What I spend time doing when people ask questions is I assess how they think about things. If they think about it in a way that makes sense, then I tell them to go and do whatever it is, even if it's not the thing I would have done, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of the time, business ain't about being right or wrong. Business is about being effective. And the thing is, most of the time, like even as business owners, you don't know.
Yeah.
Right? Like so many times I've seen people go away suggesting that it's something, and I say yes, and they come back and get way better results than my idea ever would have.
Yep.
Right? But it's like giving that ownership, giving that responsibility, letting them make decisions and learn from it. Because as I said, that's how great SEOs come out. Like no one have ever been great by not testing things and by not screwing things up and by not having to fix it, right? Like that's when you learn. You don't learn by like when you're into the right anchor text in an internal link. Like that doesn't teach you anything. What teaches you something is when shit happens and you're not ranking and you need to go play with anchor text and figure out like what anchor text is gonna make me rank. Like that teaches you things, right? But yeah, so that's key.
Yeah, the thing you said about it, not you don't know, or it doesn't have to be. You don't have to be right all the time. I have a great example of that. Is that we manage a lot of what we do through Notion, and they're very good with it, and they like it, and I fucking hate it. If it was up to me, we would have used something else entirely because I don't know why, but I can't find my way around it. I find it really unfriendly. So if it was up to me, we would have used something else. But everybody else is good at it and likes it, so that's what works, and it's working for us. So I learned to use it enough to not screw it up, basically. So we got a couple questions here. Let's see. Yash says Chris has taught and built me with Amar process. He just says I don't know and let me take action, figure out, and then come back. Yeah, Yash is helping me with one of my other brands, and he asks me questions like I don't know. So yeah. Shout out to Real Good Chris. Is kind of thank you. I think we missed some questions back here. Dan says big love for Mads, one of the smartest guys I know. Umar says huge respect for this man. Umar was on the stream 2 days ago on Tuesday.
Nice. Love Umar. He's a great guy.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday. I kind of thought we had some questions. I guess not. If you do have some questions for Matt, let us know. Steven, another one, says Mad's the man. Love this guy. Happy to call him a friend. Steven's great too. So, all right. We got about 5 minutes left. So if you have any questions, let us know. Can you tell us a little bit about your conference, the SEO Mastery? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, of course. It is only the best SEO conference in the world. Obviously. No. So cool thing is I spend a lot of time at conferences. I speak at a lot of them. About to go to Europe to speak about 6 or 7 conferences in the next couple of months. And I love talking, I love sharing, and I love events because I love meeting great people. For me, a large part of successful business is, again, creating the time to do this. Again, as I'm sure you have experienced, your business grows the most when you build valuable connections, right? Like it's rarely you just sitting grinding in your basement. Like that will get you to a certain level, but a lot of the time, the person who goes and double your business is some amazing business contact who says the right thing at the right time and it just clicks in your head, or he knows some people that you can connect to that's going to help you out. Or like for me, business is all about networking. Like my businesses, my companies are built on the back of networking, and like I enjoy most of my work, but I also enjoy really getting to know people. I really enjoy building relationships, and that's what our conference is about. So we're definitely a little bit more personal than many events, right? We spend a lot of time really helping particular people that don't know so many people and so on, really introducing them to other people, getting into the mix. And we at our event we have people from all over the world. We have lots of Americans coming. A lot of Americans is like it's cheaper to go to a great event in Vietnam than it is to go to an event in the US because ticket prices are lower and hotels cost way less and so on, right? So but yeah, we have lots of visitors from both US, Europe, Australia, and so on, and lots of like our focus is really about having a sort of a kind culture. And every time I see someone slinging business cards, I go up and put my hand on their shoulder and say, "This is not the event." And like our focus is really getting to know people, right? It's not about, hey, buy my shit, buy my links, buy my links, buy my links. Like that's not the focus. The focus is building great connection, building great network, and really building real relationships with people that you can stay in touch with, right?
Yeah, it's a big undertaking. We're actually having our first live event this year in September, and
nice.
And it's there's a lot more to it than I was expecting. It's a lot of planning and stuff, but I hated live events for a long time. I thought it was people using it as an excuse to take a vacation, which to some extent it is. But I went to my first one was the SEO Spring Training where I met you. And I really enjoyed that. And I got a lot out of it and made some good connections and stuff. And then I went to another one and then another one. And after doing that, I saw how valuable the in-person thing is that you just can't replicate, but via Facebook or whatever. So that was, after doing that, I thought about it for a day or two. I was like, I think we need to have one of our own. And because of that value, that connection that you make with people. So yeah, so I thank God I have a great team that's helping me plan it. See how that ties all together. But or I should say I'm helping them plan it. I basically just say yes or no, and they do everything else. So anyway, we'll be talking about that more in the future. Let's see. Steven says I need to get Chris on stage with this white press con. Yeah, let me. You know how to get a hold of me. We'll figure something out. I appreciate that. Yash says I want one advice. I'm solely working, and if the extra work I outsource a bit from known freelancer, I have a few projects in hand and many ongoing stuff. Not sure if I need a team. Okay, I guess he's saying, at what point do do you need a team?
Yeah. So the thing is, again, your first focus is, do you want to build a business, right? So again, it's totally okay to be a freelancer. It's totally okay to be a consultant, and that's not a bad thing. Right? You can make good money, you can make a good living from that. If you want to build a business, if you want to build a team, then again, as I said earlier, you really want to narrow it down and figure out what is one thing that you're exceptionally good at doing. So if you go back and look at your customers and say, don't just do like, hey, anyone doing SEO, come this way. It's saying, what is one thing that you execute on exceptionally well? So let me take a scenario from social media. There's so many agencies out there that do social media, and they're all crap.
Yeah,
because they hire people that are social media people, and no one is great at Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram and Twitter and all of it at the same time. Now, here's the thing: if you run a social media agency, if you specialize in something, if you go in and say, we specialize in Pinterest, we have a team that know the algorithm inside out, and our thing is we take these type of companies and we absolutely make them kick ass on Pinterest, right? One, it's so much easier as an agency to execute, because finding people who can do all social media is impossible. Finding people that do good, at least, right? If you only do Pinterest, again, then you can build a process, you can really break it down, and you can say, okay, one step is, how do we make good images? And then you have a team that can specialize and figure out, how do we make great images? Then you have maybe a team that focus on how to share these images or whatever. Right. I obviously don't know Pinterest, right? So I'm just babbling here. But you can basically break it down, and that way you can put yourself in a situation where there's a very simple, repeatable process, right? That you do over and over and over again. And here's the thing: if you do the same thing over and over and over again, one, you get way better at it, which means you can add more value. Now, when you get better at it and you can add more value, it often also happens faster. Now, here's the thing: when you can do things faster and add more value, you can also charge more money. Right? So you can charge more money to spend less time doing something, right? So if you go out and look at certain services, right? Like you can find a service, for example, let's say Wikipedia pages. So you can find a service that do just Wikipedia pages, right? Great example of a niche. All they do is Wikipedia. But they will probably, if they're very good at it and it sticks every time, they can charge a hell of a lot of money to do that.
Yeah.
Now, if they just focus on that, they can have a team that's very, very good at doing just that. And they can scale that a ton, because the marketing is clear, who they're targeting is clear, and it's simple.
Yeah, well, you can start a lot of businesses that way too, because you can just get like 3 or 4 people to get one thing in place, and then just turn out another business that does social media and one that does Wikipedia or whatever. So. All right, I think we are about at the end. Anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up?
No, it was absolutely fantastic, Chris. Always love sharing, and super awesome to talk with the audience here.
Yeah, definitely. We could have gone for hours, because we have a lot of similar ideas on these things. So I appreciate that. Programming note: we're going to take a little break for a week or two, and then we'll come back with a new lineup of guests that I will announce as soon as I get their times and stuff locked in. If you want to learn more from Mads, I'm sure you can find him on Facebook, but also check out heyramp.com and get a free, what's it called? I'm sorry.
You can sign up and get lifetime access to the disc test.
Disc test. That's what I was looking for. So,
yeah.
So I think that's a great value. I'm probably going to go sign up myself and check it out. But anyway, thank you all for being here. I know that, let me just say that I know that you could have been anywhere else in the world and you chose to spend some time with us today. I will always appreciate and never take that for granted. So thank you. We'll be back again soon. And most of all, figure out which one of life and go out and get it, because you owe it to yourself and you owe it to the world. I'll see you again soon. Peace.